Welcome back to Delta Waterfowl's The Voice of the Duck Hunter podcast. I'm your host, Joel Bryce. In this episode, I'm delighted to introduce to you my Delta colleague and Hall of Fame outdoorsman, Bill Miller. In his current role as Delta's communications director, Bill relies on his decades of experience as an outdoors communicator. Inducted into the Legends of the Outdoors Hall of Fame in 2023, Bill has been a television personality. He's led some of North America's premier hunting magazines, and he's written countless articles that celebrate the hunting lifestyle and offer useful gems for success afield. Our discussion centers on Delta Waterfowl's Duck and Goose Hunting 101 course, an online curriculum produced by Bill to empower novice hunters to safely and successfully get started waterfowling. We'll discuss why this course was created, what it uniquely offers, and how it can help connect more people to waterfowling. Bill also shares his own personal journey to duck hunting, which helps frame his perspectives on the challenges facing modern hunters, from a lack of access to mentors and hunting land to growing up disconnected from nature. That's where Delta's Duck and Goose Hunting 101 course comes in to offer practical guidance and motivation for anyone who's starting out from scratch and overwhelmed with all that goes into hunting waterfowl. So stay tuned as Bill and I unpack the details of this innovative program and the importance of mentoring new hunters. Let's get started. Bill Miller, welcome to the Delta Waterfowl podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Glad to be here. I've said this with other Delta coworkers. It always feels weird to say welcome because you work here. However, it's your first time on the podcast, so welcome.
Thanks.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm in Bismarck, North Dakota. Bill, why don't you tell the listener where you're at?
I'm in a little town in south central Tennessee, about halfway between Nashville and Chattanooga. It's where I live and work remotely as communications director for Delta.
Well, people would have a tough time figuring out where you're at, but we get a general idea. Where you call home?
Estill Springs.
Ah, right on. Never been there. I'll get there someday, Bill. Well, before we get into today's subject, and by the way, today's subject is an educational course that Delta created and has out on the internet in connection with Kelkamai, Duck and Goose Hunting 101 course. We're going to talk about the course. We're going to talk about why the course, what it is, how you can find it, and I guess some of the reasons that everybody, whether you're an avid duck hunter or a novice, should check it out. Before we get there, though, Bill, we always have to find out and learn more about the guest. So just because you're a Delta person doesn't mean you get to skip over that. Bill, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Start all the way back. Where are you from? Has hunting always been a part of your life? I know it's a huge part of your life now, but why don't you give the listener an introduction to Bill Miller?
Absolutely. It has always been a big part of my life since I can remember. My fondest memories of growing up were all related to hunting and the outdoors. My dad was a hunter. My grandfather was a hunter and a fisherman, and literally from my earliest one of my earliest memories was getting my picture taken with a buck my dad had taken when I was probably 2 or 3 years old, and I had my little pop gun and I had my foot up on the deer, and it goes all the way back to then. And my dad always had Springer Spaniels, so we had bird dogs around, and until I was 6 years old, we had an 80-acre hobby farm, horse farm that my grandfather owned, and we had our own cornfields. It was on a river, so we had duck hunting literally within walking distance of our front door. That's when I started going with my dad. When I was 6, we moved out to a different place in the country when my grandparents retired to Florida, and we had a little hobby farm, just 16 acres, but our line fence was the Kettle Moraine State Forest in eastern Wisconsin. So I always said I had a 60,000 acre backyard. And in those days, today you might not let your kids run around there. so freely. But in those days, nobody thought anything. My brother and I could be gone with our bikes back in the woods on the state trails all day long, and nobody'd think a thing of it. We'd show up in time for supper at night. So that's how I grew up, and it's what inspired me to want a career specifically in outdoor writing. Um, the story of that is when I was 11 years old, I was reading one of my favorite authors, a guy by the name of Mel Ellis, who was the outdoor writer for the Milwaukee Sentinel Journal prior about that time and prior to, but he also wrote a bunch of books, one of which was called Run Rainy Run, about a German short hair pointer that he and his wife had raised. And in the book, I'm reading this on the school bus on the way home. And in the book, he's talking about loading up the car with the shotguns and the dogs and heading to Canada so that he could follow the migration and file newspaper articles as he came back into the States. And I remember I've got the book, I've got several copies of the book. And it talks in there about how he would donate the game that he took and couldn't use himself to orphanages and old folks' homes. And so I read this on the bus. We had a long driveway on our house. I leaped out of the bus door and ran up the driveway to our house. And my dad had come home from his job in town, and he's sitting on the back bench in the hallway pulling on his boots to go out and do the barn chores. And I said, Dad, read this. My dad was into hunting, and he was a voracious reader. And he's like, what do you want me to read? And I said, no, read this. And so he reads this passage about Mel getting ready to go on this trip. And he says, okay, so, and I said, that's what I want to do. I want to do that. I want to be an outdoor writer like him. So my dad just looked up at me and said, and this was long before Nike was a household name. He just looked up at me and said, okay, do it. So from that day on, in 6th grade, I tailored everything I did, my education, in my pursuits, all of it, to becoming an outdoor writer. And the dream came true. So that's the sounds long, but that's the short story of how I came to get where I am today.
Well, you have a lot of stories, Bill. Lots of stories all around the world, all around North America. They all culminated in an experience. Was it just last summer, year before, when you had a particular induction? Can you talk about that?
Yep, last summer. I was nominated and ultimately selected for induction to the Legends of the Outdoor Hall of Fame. And it's primarily an online honor right now, but they've just redone their website. So just anyone wants to take a look and see that I'm telling the truth, just go and Google Legends of the Outdoors, and it'll take you to their website. And for more than 20 years, they've been inducting people into this Hall of Fame. And I was just blessed to be one of them. My good friend, Jay Wade Fears, who's been my career-long mentor, nominated me, and the board saw fit to induct me last summer.
Name drop a few other people. What are some household names that have already been inducted?
It is across the board. I mean, it's Bill Dance is in there. Anybody that knows bass fishing knows Bill Dance. Bill Jordan, Toxie Hayes of Realtree and Mossy Oak Camouflage, Wade Bourne, well-known waterfowl writer, did a lot of work for Ducks Unlimited. it truly is. I mean, I'm not one to toot my own horn, but it truly is a who's who of outdoor writing over the years, as well as the outdoor industry. Lots and lots of people in there who created empires in hunting and fishing.
Well, I think a lot of people that might recognize the name Bill Miller would probably recognize your face. You had quite a bit of time on television, right?
Yeah, I altogether I was on some form of outdoor television for 23 years. I got into it at just the right time, back in the days when ESPN had outdoor programming on their main channel. So the first show I was on commercial television was called North American Outdoors, and it aired Saturday mornings on ESPN. Did a lot of different shows on a lot of different networks since then. And in addition to writing about and having experiences in hunting, I was also fairly well known for being a gun writer. And one of the shows, actually the show that was on the longest, was what we called a vignette. It was just a 90-second piece that aired every week called Shoot More Often. And it gave some tip or product review about either the shooting sports or hunting related to firearms. So I'd have people, when you say get recognized, I'd have people run up to me in the airport and reach out to shake my hand and say, shoot more often, right? And I'm like, yeah, that's me.
You know you're doing something right. Well, Bill, I asked you to talk about this one, so it's okay to I asked you to toot your own horn, and what this really does, you're an amazing individual. You're a very talented individual. We're lucky to have you here, but all of it kind of sets up, I think, the credibility of the Duck and Goose Hunting 101 course. Before we go there, though, I talk at times about how we're on these podcasts. I see all kinds of rabbit holes, all kinds of, in other words, tangents that I feel like I could go down, but I have to back up to one of them. You described your childhood. I think you said you had a 60,000 acre backyard, and you would disappear for an entire day. And I had that exact same experience, not the same part of Wisconsin, but it was also in Wisconsin. My parents, I lived in the country. We had our own 60 acres, but either friendly neighbors, county land, other types of property. I literally would wake up in the morning and I would take off and I would come back at dark. More specifically, my parents mounted a huge old school bell right at the end of our sidewalk out in front of our house. I could be probably 2 miles away from home on a quiet day and I could still hear that bell. But when that bell went off, I had to come home. But I kind of reflect on that, and man, I don't know if I'd be comfortable with my kids doing that, how quickly the world has changed. I think so many people listening to this probably feel the same way. Do you feel that way, Bill?
Absolutely. I mean, things changed a bit as I was growing up when we lived on that farm. This was near a town called Plymouth, Wisconsin, Sheboygan County. And out in the western part of the county where we were, there was entirely as I was growing up, we knew it as the boys' school. It was a reform school. And then at some point before I got into high school, they actually changed it to a medium security prison. And when that happened, my parents got a little bit more wary about us running around in case something would happen. But even without that, you literally, things have changed so much that parents today, I believe, we don't have children, but would be neglectful in letting their kids run wild like we did, simply because of all the dangers that are out there for them. If we had kids, I don't think we have a granddaughter through a strange set of circumstances of not having children, and I would not turn Harper Ensley free to run like we did. Absolutely.
Yeah, it happens fast. This little tangential discussion we're having here actually is quite relevant to the whole Duck and Goose Hunting 101 course that we're about to talk about. I do think that disconnect from nature, the lack of comfort of this generation, I don't know. Am I at that age, Bill, already, where I'm talking about this generation and that generation? I guess so.
Sorry,
I guess
sorry,
so.
you are.
I am. But I'm not a huge reader. I like to read. I feel like with my life, with kids and jobs and all that kind of stuff, I don't get to read as much as I want to. But this whole discussion really got me thinking of a couple books. One that I've personally read cover to cover, Last Child in the Woods, and it talks about, actually it's Last Child in the Woods, Saving Our Children from Nature Deficit Disorder, and it talks about how disconnected modern society is from nature and the outdoors, and describes the consequences of that, actually real consequences and then predicted consequences. And one of the sections in there, it's even talking about how playgrounds don't have any, they don't have wood chips, they don't have dirt, there's no vegetation, it's all synthetic products. Even the ground, it's so bugs and dirt and weeds. Even city kids have, who we would think, Bill, like you and I would think, these individuals are starved from nature. They're even more starved. They don't even have access to that. The other book, I have not read it, but I trust it's a great book. It was written by Steve Rinella, Outdoor Kids in an Inside World, and I guess the subtitle of that one is Getting Your Family Out of the House and Radically Engaged with Nature. And so I think it's all of this, Bill, has led, in my opinion, one of the reasons, but I think it really grabs all the things like video games and sports and computers, is we've been experiencing for quite some time, Bill, a decline in overall hunting license sales. So in other words, hunter numbers have been on the decline for quite a long time. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like this is maybe one of the big contributing factors, Bill?
I would say it's absolutely the biggest contributing factor. It without the ability to spend time in the field, in the woods, it's impossible for kids today to spark any kind of connection with hunting. I mean, it just doesn't. When I was a kid, and we're going to say this 1,000 times during this podcast, but when I was a kid, all we talked about, I and my buddies in class, or when we were supposed to be studying, was hunting and fishing or football. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing else. And I was thinking about this as I was preparing to do this interview. My life is a series of dots, like those old puzzle books for kids where you draw a line from A to B to C to D to E to F to make some kind of picture. The spots, the dots, are monumental hunting memories for me, particularly waterfowling, but in general, just hunting memories. Everything else is just the white space in between that connected the dots. And I'll contend that there is no way for an 8, a 9, a 10, a 12, a 14-year-old to feel that way anymore. I can remember exactly where I took my first Canada goose, who I was with, what dog we had with us, um, like it was yesterday. And that was one of those dots. And then it went on to the next and the next. And I really do feel sorry that kids don't have that level of ability to connect today.
For many, they don't. They really don't. And we talk about it a lot, Bill, here, you and I, others at Delta, in that hunting for generation upon generation upon generation, hunting was a hand-me-down tradition. I think hunting in and of itself is a simple act, but the execution is quite complicated. What gun do I need? What license do I need? Where do I go? How do I go about it? And I think in today's world, I don't know that if you just had a young person and gave them a firearm and said, "Go figure it out." Yeah, again, I think we'd kind of beat this one to death. I don't know that today's modern society really supports that learning by doing. As a young person, I reflect on a friend that I know grew up in northern North Dakota, and he was telling small town, and he talked about duck hunting at a tiny age. He fashioned a holder on the front of his bike, a holder for his shotgun, and he'd strap his shotgun, and he'd go riding his bike out of town, and he would just wander around trying to figure out how to duck hunt. And he figured it out on his own, but really, I think hunting, particularly waterfowl hunting, is a type of hunting that is best experienced with a mentor. So now, when hunting was a hand-me-down tradition from parent to child or grandparent to grandchild, or pick another, close family circle type
Yeah.
hand-me-down, that's broken in many, many, many households. I'd say it's most households. What I think was it 5 or 6% of the U.S. population hunts. So in most households, let's just state it, they're not connected to hunting. And
Well,
so,
and then
yeah, go ahead.
if we're specifically talking about waterfowl hunting, it's far, far less than that. I mean, if there's 1 million duck hunters in the United States, and there's a population of 350 million people, that's less than 1/3%.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like your math, Bill. That makes me sad. But it's accurate. It's absolutely accurate. And so I think we've effectively, Bill, kind of wandered our way to this duck and goose hunting 101 course. So, one of the questions that we wanted to cover is why. I think we effectively led people here. So if you don't grow up in a hunting family, which most people did not or have not, and how the heck are you going to learn how to hunt? And so we decided that it was time for Delta to put out some self-help materials. And I think that's actually a little bit more simplistic. I think we do need to tip our cap to Calcami Enterprises. There was an individual, Mitch Strobel, who's no longer at Calcami, but I remember him giving us a call and saying, "Hey, we want to partner with you to create basically a how to duck hunt course, and we'll put it on our platform, and we'll both promote it." And that was the brainchild. And I think, Bill, with your experience and background, we brought you immediately into the conversation. We decided to do it, and the overwhelming majority of the credit for the product that's out there belongs to you, right, Bill? Why don't you tell us some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I will absolutely take credit for authoring it, and I am very, very proud of it. And I and Delta went into it with that exact mindset. We wanted to come up with a course that, even lacking a mentor, which is really incredibly important, but even lacking a mentor, somebody who this course was intended for someone who has just graduated their hunter safety training course online. And it's meant to offer a seamless transition into a course that, if they took it and completed it successfully, could put them into position to safely, legally, and ethically shoot at their first duck. Now, I can't say take their first duck or goose, because we can't teach wing shooting online. But even without outside assistance, if you took this course, you should be able to figure out how to get to a place safely, legally, and ethically that will allow you to get a shot at a bird. Now, that said, if you add the mentor into the equation, it's all the better.
Agreed. Absolutely agreed. And I like your point there, Bill. It's been a while since I went, word for word, video for video through that course, but I like what you pointed out there. It's that it's intended to pick up where hunter safety left off, right? So we don't, in this course, we don't do this grinder, exhaustive, I guess kind of a redundant process of the hunter education. But of course, we do talk about safety and a lot of other factors.
Yeah. I mean, and there are many aspects of waterfowling that require some the challenging part about working from state required hunter education courses is, even for from Calcami, states require different levels of familiarity and things that the students have been introduced to successfully graduate the course. Some states, like I did a lot of work in Minnesota because I lived there for almost 30 years. Minnesota was heavy into knowledge of wildlife and the North American model of conservation and all of those things. Many states don't require that in their hunter safety training at all. It is purely firearms safety training. So we needed to make sure that for those that were lacking things like information about how North American model works, we included that in our course as well.
Yeah, I think that was a really important component. Bill, it just kind of occurred to me that we should probably tell people how they can find this. And I was kind of laughing. I said, "Oh, I look at the web address. I'm not sure if I can say that in a way that people can type it themselves." But then I thought maybe I can do this. So it's the www, of course, today's hunter. So that's not possessive. So it's TODAYS hunter.com/duck-goose-101. And that should get you to what Calcami's Today's Hunter platform. And it's pretty easy. I think this particular course is offered it's $29.99. And I think it's important for people listening, if you do purchase this or if you gift this to someone else, there are proceeds that come back to Delta Waterfowl to support, our HunteR3 programming, which is, primarily the university hunting program, our hunting advocacy efforts. So it is a good way to learn about duck hunting, teach someone else to duck hunt, but then also to support future hunter recruitment efforts, which I'm particularly proud of. I think you're the same way, right?
Absolutely. And honestly, if somebody's listening to this podcast in the car and you didn't get a chance to write it down, if you just go to today'shunter.com, it can get you in, or you can go to deltawaterfowl.org, and we've got links on our website. If you search Today's Hunter or Waterfowl Hunting or Duck and Goose Hunting 101 on our site, we've got links that'll get you right there.
Bill, can you give the listeners just some of the, we spent quite a bit of time thinking about how we were going to structure this. Can you talk about some of the overall structure, maybe what people would expect to find when they jump into the course?
the goal is to introduce complete newcomers to waterfowl hunting without overwhelming them with information. We tried to provide enough information so that they could accomplish that goal that we mentioned earlier of putting themselves into the position to get a shot at a duck. So we broke out and said, okay, what is it that we absolutely need when it comes to skills, knowledge, and understanding the laws of waterfowl hunting to take that first bird. And we did it in such a way that we covered the most important things first, and the most important things aren't necessarily what you might think of. The most important, in my mind, the number one skill that you need to master to get in position to take a duck is scouting and finding a place to hunt. So we put a lot of emphasis on that. Yeah, there's knowledge of the shotguns. There's, requirements of the ammunition that we use. But when it comes to things like duck calling, you can get a lot of ducks without doing a lot of calling. You can find hunting situations where you don't even need decoys at all. So that got pushed farther down the list. We talk a lot about the ethics and the things that you should do when you're in the field, so that you set, even as a newcomer who doesn't know a lot about the game yet, you're setting a good example for the outside world, who looks at us and judges all of us by what you're doing. So those things bubble to the top of importance, more than what kind of gear you need, what kind of camouflage you need, boats and decoys and all those things. Of course, safety is first. I mean, waterfowling does introduce a lot of aspects that other types of hunting don't. Can introduce watercraft, so we had to talk about water safety and how, always wearing your life jacket and that kind of thing. Wading, that adds a whole nother aspect to it. So I believe that the course that we produced delivers on the most important aspects without overwhelming the student.
I do think that's the important part. I have a lot of conversations about how duck hunting, actually, Bill, I bet you a lot of your early memories of duck hunting were quite simple. Mine were too. But then I think it's a natural course when you really fall in love with something that you can only hunt. Let's say you can only hunt ducks. Let's say you're just going to hunt them in your home state. You can only hunt them, depending on where you live, 1 to 3 months, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you do with the other 9 months? You think, you dream, you plan, you buy gear, and you intentionally add complexity to hunting waterfowl. And it may not be complexity that you're seeing or experiencing, but if you think about it from an outsider, saying, I'm not sure if I want to hunt ducks, and you look at the way an avid duck hunter approaches duck hunting, it's going to be really intimidating. The boats, the gear, the time. Wow, right?
Yep. In developing this course and in a lot of the writing that I do for Delta in general, and our communications team does, I frequently intentionally take a step back and look at what's involved in the way that I hunt ducks today. And myself and others, I think, far too often take all of that for granted. I mean, the attic of my garage is stuffed with decoys. um, I've got a gun safe that's got guns that, might get pulled out for one specific situation during the course of the year. That is not what getting started as a waterfowl hunter can be or should be. It should be that simple: go out to a pothole, find a place to hide and stand still, and wait for the one flock of wood ducks to come in right before sunset that you're going to get some shooting at. You don't need all you need for that's a pair of hip boots, a shotgun, and some ammo, and you're good to go. We just take too much for granted as people that have hunted all their lives.
It is a hard line to walk, though, Bill, in the sense that, as avid waterfowlers, we love to talk and think and plan, and our conversations are quite complex, and we should celebrate that. It's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. All the gear that someone can accumulate, all the tips and tactics and strategies to help be more successful. That is so amazing. But on the other hand, I can view how that kind of dialogue is alienating or potentially alienating for someone who didn't have that common background, who doesn't have a mentor, who didn't grow up around it. And so it's really difficult to walk that line. And we talk about it all the time in that if hunting is going to exist indefinitely into the future, it's going to rely on people that we just described have no hunting background whatsoever. It's just by definition. The human population appears like it's going to keep growing. So if only hunters are recruiting their children or their close friends, hunting will continue to decline. So if we're going to enjoy this robust future as hunters, as a hunting community, we're going to have to bring in those people who are potentially alienated by our conversation. So it is so hard to represent both viewpoints at the same time.
Yeah, I think maybe the best way to say it is hunting is a lifestyle. Maybe I'm not a golfer, but maybe golf, for some people, golf is a lifestyle. I mean, they moved to live on a golf course so that they could play golf every day and have tons and tons of equipment. But for anybody, if you were trying to recruit me as a golfer, I would be so intimidated because you're asking me, somebody who's totally uninitiated, not just to go out and shoot around a golf. You're asking me to step into and participate in an entire lifestyle. And that's what happens too often, I think, in particular waterfowl hunting. We're asking them to buy in all at once rather than, hey, just come along and see what this one thing is like.
Yeah. I mean, I feel the same way. Golf is a great example. On TV, it looks pretty simple, but yeah, it is a little bit intimidating for me as well. I do think it's, I pulled up a document, Bill, about the original outline of the course, and I do think I want to double down on that. We wanted to truly make it an entry level, not intimidating, but at the same time, I've received quite a bit of feedback over the last couple of years from avid waterfowlers. And one guy stands out in particular. I don't think I could remember his name, but he sent in an email and just kind of complimenting the course, saying, hey, I've been hunting my whole life. He goes, and I am constantly looking for ways to learn new things. And he said, as a lifelong waterfowler, he said, I bought this course and I took it. And he goes, I'll be honest with you, I learned a bunch. And so I think this is not just for the novice. It can be for the avid as well. We tried to, there, of course, there's going to be some nuggets in there. I think anybody can teach anybody anything about hunting, about duck hunting. So I would encourage people to take a look or consume it with your child or friend or new hunter that you're wanting to mentor, but just hitting some of the high points.
Yeah, I think that I'm sorry, Joel.
No, that's okay. Yeah. Well, there's an introduction, about why duck hunting
Yeah.
and all those types of things. And then it's finding a place to hunt. And you lumped it into public land, private land, clubs and leases, guides and outfitters. So we do have short sections on all of that. When to hunt, covering common waterfowl seasons, great first-time opportunities like resident goose seasons or early teal seasons, youth days. You covered regulations, when to hunt. And I think, we're talking about a lot of the common waterfowl seasons, Bill. And I think one of the cool things there is you point out special seasons. Special seasons can be great for new hunters. The temperatures are warm. If it's a young person, like youth days, that excludes, adults. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's a lot less competition out there. Talk about regs, bag limits, the importance of good duck and goose ID skills, scouting, why it's important, how to do it. Talked about how to hunt in some big bucket categories, overwater, field hunting, jump shooting, and then basic gear. I think that really kind of brings home. We really tried to point out, hey, you can take this as complicated as you want. Please do so. But you can enter it at a very basic point, just like you talked there. Waders, gun, maybe a little bit of camouflage. We talk about basics for duck and goose calling, basic decoy strategies. I like this one, hunting with and without a dog. I think a lot of people that enter hunting probably don't have a dog, but as soon
Mm-hmm.
as you see somebody with a dog, you want one yourself. So we covered both of
Yeah.
that. And then this is the part too, is this maybe is the most intimidating part, Bill, if you've not been around it, is cleaning and care of waterfowl, but then also cooking. I do think let's just own it. I think poorly cooked
Oh.
waterfowl is not it's not a great way to introduce somebody to cooking wild game, but there are
Mm.
fantastic recipes to cook ducks and geese. So we cover that a little bit as well. And then we do talk about some safety considerations, boats, um, personal flotation devices. We talk a little bit about hypothermia and some boat safety courses that you can take. Guns around dogs. That's one. Bill, do you have any horror stories of guns and dogs?
Um, I've been blessed not to have seen any terminal issues, but I've seen some close calls that scared me to death. Yeah. Um, dogs dogs are a huge part of the hunting for me, or have become a huge part of the hunting for me. And I'm almost to the point, although I don't know if I'll ever get quite there, that if I didn't have a good dog with us, I wouldn't go. But um, it adds a whole unknown factor, because you can never completely 100% know what a dog is going to do before it does it. So if you aren't paying attention to where you set your shotgun down, and making sure the safety's on, it can be a disaster.
Yeah, I don't have any negative experiences with a dog either, but I've heard enough of them over time, and it typically involves, you know, sharing your blind with a dog. The
Yep.
shotgun is propped somewhere, and dogs being dogs, will either on the way to a retrieve or just being social in the blind end up stumbling across the gun,
The, the guy,
knocking it over, accidentally discharging it at the
yeah,
same
the
time.
guy down on the end unwraps his sandwich and the dog hears it. He's gonna go.
Yeah, for sure. And then I guess there's the other things too. Again, I've knock on wood, I haven't had this experience myself, but there at times there are hunting accidents that involve the dog being severely harmed or killed. So I don't
Yeah.
recall if we cover that, but I would imagine Would imagine we at least hinted at that one.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Dogs out, guns up.
Yep, for sure. And then this is
We
always
talk. We
the
talk.
tricky part, Bill, is etiquette. That's a tough one. The second you get into that one, it's really tricky. But I think we did a great job navigating, some of the obvious things. What do you recall some of the content in the etiquette section?
Um, good. The hunter ed courses cover a lot of it. You should cover a lot of it, but all the basics of, if you cross a gate or go through a gate, leave the gate as you found it. That's the law of the land. If you rut up a field when you're driving out, it's your responsibility to fill those ruts. At the end of the day, it's up to you to pick up the shells, so there isn't a mess left out in the field or floating on the water. Those are the things that people outside of hunting, the majority of whom are not anti-hunters but are non-hunters, look at us and judge us on. So we've got to do it right. I mean, if a farmer comes out in his field and he gave you permission to hunt, and he comes out and he's got new ruts that are 2 feet deep out in the middle of the field, the next time you ask, or probably any hunter asks him if they can hunt on the property, he's going to say no. So we just got to take care of those things as part of being out there.
For sure, for sure. And on this particular platform, there are quizzes after each section, and then there's a final exam. So I do think it's a neat sense of accomplishment for people that purchase this course to pass it, right? And then we actually get the results of the people that take that purchase the course and then take and pass their exams, and then we're able to interact with those and give them kind of a pat on the back. And the free gifts change here and there, but generally speaking, we do send those that complete their course, we do send them a little token of congrats and our appreciation. So
Yep.
one of the things
them,
that go ahead, Bill.
I believe we give them access to our digital magazine as well, Delta Waterfowl magazine.
Yeah, and I want to say that at least one of the things we've done in the past is a coupon to discount code for our duck identification field guide. I think that's one of them as well, and that comes in super handy. They kind of go hand in hand. That particular guide is, not to go too far down that one, but it's great for new hunters in the sense that when you have that bird in hand, it really coaches an individual how to identify that bird positively in hand, but then also giving that feedback so they can identify that bird on the wing next time it comes into the decoys.
Yep, that book has a foolproof system in it, which is priceless, really.
It is. Now, one of the things that we're kind of talking about real time here, Bill, is that this particular course now is, it's a great partnership with Calcami. There is a paywall there. We talked about the cost of, let's just round it to $30. But we are in conversation about taking some of this content, the how-to videos and some of the how-to sections, and putting it on our website for people to just have access to and share. So we do predict this will be available, not in identical format, but a lot of the content will be available for just mass consumption. I would, I do want to point out though, is that when it comes through Calcami, it is one of those situations where someone can have that sense of accomplishment. You take those quizzes, and it's a slightly different, it's a much different platform than our website, but it's also something that, like I said, it's to come up with that sense of accomplishment, and then also supporting, future hunter recruitment efforts at the same time. Right. So I'm excited, though. I think we're all excited to share this information. Maybe for those that aren't in a position to purchase a course like this.
Right, and it truly, being on deltawaterfowl.org, kind of in pieces and parts makes it available to the masses. And as you said earlier, if waterfowl hunting is going to survive, the new hunters have to come from the masses of the general public. And so anything that we can do to encourage that is what we want to do and need to do. And I just wanted to mention one more thing, if it's all right, Joel, about the importance of this course and this content really for mentors. When you invite somebody that's never been waterfowl hunting before to come out for that first trip, I think one of the most important things you can do is put yourself in their shoes, particularly if it's a younger person. And I probably may get in trouble for this, but a female, you're asking them to show up in the dark in a place and an environment they've never experienced before, to go out with somebody who, you know, if we're not talking a relative, probably somewhat of a relative stranger, they need to have familiarity with what's going to happen and what's going to go on, so that they've got some trust in you. So it's not like, oh, where is this guy taking me, and what's he going to do to me, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think this course does a great job of that. Anyone who goes through the information will at least have a basic understanding of what to expect, and that'll give them a lot more trust in you.
That's a good point. Yeah, I think as mentors, it's quite a responsibility, and it's good to kind of tip the hand of what to expect. And I think one of the challenges I had, as my wife could attest to this. My wife never hunted before I met her, and when I took her out for the first time, it was kind of like a date, but I treated it like she was a lifelong hunter, and I did not give her the best experience, because again, I treated her like she was just one of my hunting buddies, and I almost ruined her on the whole experience, just because again, it was a little bit too shocking, it was a little bit too hard, she was a little bit too unprepared. So, she still razzes me to this day, but that experience really helped me introduce my kids to hunting. My kids love to hunt, and we love to hunt together, but I'm kind of thankful for that experience, and I apologize to my wife. I can do it right now too, but sorry, honey. But it actually did help me make sure I didn't make those mistakes with my kid. I think you take things for granted when you've been around it forever. Sometimes, I think we say this about anything. You can be too close to something, and it's helpful for someone to kind of shake you loose from that comfort and perspective, and see a little bit different way. So I do think that this course would be something, and the material, once it's up on our website, I think it's something that, again, avid hunters, I think it might challenge you to look at it from a little different perspective as well. So
yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, I think we covered it real nice, Bill. I think we wandered along around here, and our hope that people will give this one a look, or pass it on to others for them to give a look. Any parting comments, Bill?
Nope. Just, I'm not sure exactly where this falls in the schedule, but we will be working towards getting this information up on the site here in the very near future.
Very good. Very good. Well, with hunting season upon some, and I guess soon to be upon the balance of the United States, it's a good time for this conversation.
We're going full circle to where I live. we have to be where I am right here. We have to be among the last people to get regular duck season going. It doesn't open until the Saturday after Thanksgiving. So
No kidding. Wow.
for me to go out to my local WMA here, I've got months to wait yet. Our teal season's just about over, but till real waterfowl hunting is more than 2 months.
Well, all good things come to those who wait, Bill.
Yeah, but I can come up to Bismarck, right? Maybe you can
Yeah,
show.
come on up. Come on up. So there's a spare bedroom.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks for your time, Bill. Appreciate it. And we'll
You bet.
stay in touch.